I'm joined from our Westminster studio by Chris Southworth, Secretary-General at the International Chamber of Commerce, and the Conservative MEP, David Campbell Bannerman, also joins us. Many thanks indeed to you both for joining us this afternoon. Chris Southworth, this approach by the CBI, is it a common-sense approach, or is it denying the will of the British people?
No, I don't think it's denying the will of the British people at all. I think business leaders fully accept that the UK is leaving the EU. The question is how to undertake that process with minimal disruption to businesses themselves, and that's what the CBI are referring to, is that you have one transition to whatever that new agreement is rather than having two transitions.
David Campbell Bannerman, we want minimal disruption to businesses in order to benefit the United Kingdom, in order to benefit the economy, so a transitional approach is the way forwards.
I think it's rather pathetic, to be honest. Look, we have no quotas, no tariffs with the EU, and all our laws are convergent. I mean, what are we going to spend 2 years doing? We're going to be talking about the city protecting financial services. Canada was only 3 years, actually, negotiation. I worked on that myself with the EU. We can do a super Canada deal very effectively. We don't need transitional arrangements.
Chris Southworth, super Canada deal?
Well, the Canada deal is certainly a possibility. I mean, I think the UK have said themselves that Canada is a benchmark, but it's not necessarily an off-the-shelf solution. But a free trade agreement with the EU is an option for sure. The question is, how do you get to that point? An average free trade deal takes 7 years to undertake. We've got 18 months, effectively, to agree that deal. And I think what people are saying is that, yes, you can undertake or agree a framework deal within 18 months. You can probably agree a lot of the low-hanging fruit, the easy stuff, but there are a lot more complicated issues like finance, agriculture, tariffs, customs that may well take a little bit longer. So it's just a sensible solution to say, for that bit that takes longer, you then have transitional arrangements until the final deal is actually agreed, and then you move straight into that new deal arrangement.
David Campbell Bannerman.
I think this is all too negative. I mean, Australia, under Tony Abbott, they did 3 free trade agreements in 1 year, and he said, do what you can in 1 year and get on with it. And they delivered on that. That's 1 year, not 2. We have 2 years, and we don't have 16,500 goods tariffs to get rid of, as a lot of the WTO and the Canadians had to get rid of. So it's much more straightforward. I accept services we have to concentrate on, but let's get on and do it rather than talking about it and trying to undo the referendum as the CBI did. They've got everything wrong, including joining the euro, the ERM, and they're getting this wrong too.
Chris, if there was a transitional approach in order to avoid what's been described as a cliff edge, would we expect the United Kingdom to adhere to European rules on the freedom of movement of peoples, the European Court of Justice, for example?
Well, I think ultimately the important bit is to get the right deal for everybody at whenever that is, and I think, and then get from here to that point in the best way possible. I mean, but this is serious stuff, and it's not just about what the UK want politically. It's about the impact that has on businesses, not just in Europe, but all over the world. And there are some very technical, practical issues. Nobody is suggesting or trying to block the process. I don't hear anyone talking in those terms. There's complete acceptance of where the UK is. The question is, how do you implement that in the best way possible with minimum disruption to people's lives? There are people's lives. There's livelihoods, there's jobs. There's cost to businesses. You know, this is serious stuff, and it needs to be taken seriously. It's not a question of whether you're putting a block in the way. Nobody's trying to do that.
David Campbell Bannerman, I see you shaking your head.
Well, what the CBI are advocating is sort of open-ended, being stuck in the EU customs union and the single market. I mean, they're trying. It's very undemocratic. This is a disgrace. We want a proper deal. We may have an implementation phase. You know, when you say, right, we've done the deal, but it will take place like the customs union will start.
Chris has suggested that Brexit is going to happen. Is not denying the will of the British people. He's just saying that it might make sense in order to benefit the UK economy as a whole, in order for more sensible approach was taken to it all.
I'm sorry, this is a clever way of undermining the decision of the British people, because if you get stuck in the customs union, the single market, I mean, Norway, the EEA agreement they're in, they're very unhappy with it. Many aspects of Norway they're unhappy with. There's greater intervention from the EU all the time. They want a new deal as well. We don't want to be stuck in there paying out a lot. And David Cameron said in the referendum, well, you get to pay, but you have no say. We don't want that deal. It's been condemned by business in the referendum. Now they're advocating it, a lot of these people, including the CBI. And I just think it is wrong-headed. And we need to get on with a good deal, a super Canada deal, as soon as possible.
Chris, very interesting from the Prime Minister talking to our political editor, Faiza Islam. Her tone has changed from the Conservative manifesto. Then she was talking about the United Kingdom leaving the customs union, leaving the single market. And now she's talking about frictionless trade deals. Is that something that you welcome, presumably?
Yeah, the more frictionless the trade deal is, the easier it is for businesses to trade, and the more jobs they can create, and the more prosperity they can generate. I mean, that's ultimately that's the dream, if you like, the aspiration for businesses all over the world. So we certainly welcome that. But I don't understand a lot of what David's talking about, to be honest. You're just jumping to all sorts of conclusions about what that final deal option is. I don't think anyone is saying what the deal is at the end. The question is how to do it in the best possible way for businesses and taking responsibility. There's a world of difference between the UK and Norway. It's a much more complicated economy. It has a much more integrated approach globally. So there are businesses all over the world who rely on finance that comes out of the city to fund their goods all over the emerging markets, all over the continent. So it's incredibly important that we take that responsibility, the UK takes that responsibility, and gets it right. The Brexit is actually in a context, it's interesting we're having this conversation on the G20 summit day. Trade barriers are on the increase. It's incredibly important. We need business leaders and government leaders to address that issue. There is only one G20 country that's actually come into the ICC's open market index score in the top 20 today. And that's Canada, and nobody else has. The UK is actually ranked number 28, so we're pretty average when it comes to free trade and open trade. We've got to get to grips with that issue, and Brexit is a risk to that. I think what people are saying here is let's try and reduce the risk, let's be sensible, and let's do it in the right way for the right outcome, so that everybody wins. It's not a sort of one win-lose, it's a win-win for everybody.
David Campbell Bannerman, as Chris was saying, trade tariffs are on the up. It'd be interesting to get your thoughts on the trade deal that has taken place between the European Union and Japan. Is that something that heartens you, that you would welcome, or is that something that concerns you as Britain goes into negotiations with its European counterparts?
No, I'm in favour of free trade. I'm on the Trade Committee of the European Parliament, and I welcome that, though it's only really a political agreement. It doesn't go very far. We've been waiting years for this. I've been 8 years on the committee, been waiting about that long to hear of this deal. You know, there's no move on China or India or even the United States from the EU now. Britain could power ahead on those, and I'm amazed the CBI is opposing Britain doing its own trade deals. I mean, what are they there for heaven's sake? Now, Canada has 99% access to the EU single market with no freedom of movement and no access fees. For heaven's sake, we can do better than that. They're the 12th largest trading partner with the EU. We are the top one.
Chris Southworth, David Campbell Bannerman, many thanks indeed for joining us this afternoon.